Hello, this is a Nissan VK45DE engine. I know that opening line seems so familiar because we've made so many different videos on this engine, but we're still here. I thought I'd be done with it, but I've been all around the world when it comes to Nissan engines and I haven't found anything smoother. It's a nice balanced engine and, well, obviously this one is on an engine stand because I've got an engine project, but that's a story for another day. So in the past, I've covered this engine. I've talked about the differences as it's used in the US models versus the JDM models, that's Japanese domestic market. I've talked about Infiniti M specifically, the 2003 and 2004, and then the later years, how things changed. But there's still been a gap because every once in a while in private conversations, people reach out to me and we discuss, how do I know the right engine to buy? And I've answered those questions, but I figured, we're getting to a certain point that I think more people are replacing their engines. And I'd like to make a video that does our best to kind of answer those questions, because every once in a while I do see people buying the wrong engines. So I figured all the information that's out there, maybe it's not well condensed in one video. It's very technical, telling you so many different things, so many wonderful things. But if you just want to buy an engine, how do you go about it? Okay, so that's what this video attempts to do. So I'll do my best to not make it too long, but as I've said, the video will be as long as the video needs to be, because I'd like you to come out of this video with as little confusion as possible. Okay, let's go. So when you're looking at the Nissan VK45DE, it's a V8 engine, and you can break it down to three main components: intake manifold, the block, and then the oil pan down there. Okay, so let's cover these things as you can see them. When you open your hood, one of the first things you see is your intake manifold. So there are two types of intake manifolds. There's this one here, I call the side entry, and then we have a front entry, which is not here right now, but if I can get a video picture later, I'll add it in, but I'm trying to upload this video quickly, so maybe that won't happen. So depending on what vehicle you have, that will determine what kind of intake you get to use. And yes, there are differences. This one here has throttle cables. Some of the side entries are all electronic, so no throttle cables, but in the basic sense, there are two types. It's either coming in from the side or coming in from the front. All this other stuff can be bolted on, okay? Second thing I'd like to talk about is the oil pan. Two main oil pan designs. This one here has a flat bottom, as you can see. And then there's another one that usually has a dip, comes in this way, then drops down, and then goes all the way. So two main oil pan designs. However, there's another variation to this. Some Nissan vehicles with this engine were all-wheel drive. So all-wheel drive models usually have front axles. So some oil pans have an access for the front axles to go through. So you could say 3, give or take. We'll get to that. The last but not least, actually, it's the most important thing, actually. This right here is your starter, okay? Depending on where your starter is located, that determines the shape of your block and what else you can use. So this one right here, I usually tell people, when you're buying one of these engines, come to the back, right? And look and make sure that your starter is on the left side, okay? And again, the reference is you're behind the engine, belts are in front. This is the left, this is the right, okay? Make sure that the starter is on this side if you're trying to do it for an Infiniti M45 from 2006 and up. But if you're doing it for the older engines, then your starter needs to be on that side. So right now, that's a whole lot of stuff, right? So 2 intakes, 2 or 3 oil pans, and 2 different block designs. I'm going to do my best to sketch it here. A little office setup here. I'll do my best to depict what we have going on. Hopefully my illustrations are clear enough. Okay, so first thing I'd like to do is let's deal with the intake. It's, it'll look like a loaf of bread. Okay, so side entry. Exaggerated, but I just want you to get what we have going on here. Okay, so this is a side entry. You have another intake that looks like this. Again, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so this one is actually has a little more rounding going on with it. But then this one here actually has throttle body coming in from the front, and it also goes to the left. So all VK45DEs have one throttle body, but the front entry versus side entry is just in reference to how it comes into the intake manifold. So that's why we have this versus this. So this is the first thing, intake manifold, right? Second thing I want to talk about is the block. So this is looking at it from this is the front, this is front. With the V, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to draw it the same way. It's going to be facing the front, although it might be a little funny to look at it that way. Just for consistency purposes. Okay, it looks the same so far, right? But as I said, we're drawing it like a V. So again, this is the front. Do the same thing here. We've got two main engine block designs. Okay, front. Okay, so first with this one here, we've got the starter on the right side of the engine. When you're standing in front of the car, it's going to be on the left side, but you know, when you're sitting in the driver's seat, it's going to be on your right side. Then we've got this other one here, like this. And this right here is a depiction of this, right? Because when we come this way, you'll see this, well, can't see it, but the starter is on this side right here. It's a little goofy to look at, but let's do it this way. You know, I'll come back to that. We'll come back to it, don't worry. Then oil pans, there's, I said, either 2 or 3 designs, depending on how you look at it. Versus this one here. And I've got videos showing this one right here, what it looks like. Profile is mostly the same. Rear-wheel drive. Then we've got an all-wheel drive. And I believe the all-wheel drive actually looks like this. It's a flat bottom with a pass-through. There you go, for the front axle. Okay, so who uses these? Let's talk about the US. Who uses these engines and these combinations? Okay, so first, for this one right here, this side entry, it's going to be Q45, Infiniti Q45. That's 02 to 06. Infiniti M45, 03, and 04, right? Then the FX45 uses that as well, 03 until, I believe, 06. It might be 05 or 06. I can't remember. Let's just go with 05 right here. 3, 4, 5, okay? Correct me if I'm wrong here. As I said, I'm doing this kind of on the fly, so the detail, just look at your engine bay and you'll see what you got. This one here is used by the Infiniti M45, 2006 to 2010. And then the FX45 from here, so 06 until 2008. And it stopped here because from 2009, the FX became the FX50, okay? And then this block right here. Who uses this one here with the starter on the passenger side in the US? I guess this is a US model, so let's just call it passenger side, right? This one here is used by the let's start consistency, Q45, 02 to 06. All of them use that. M45, 03, and 04. This one right here is used by the M45, 06 through 2010. And then it's also used by the FX45, 2003, all years through 2008. See, the thing about this right here is that all-wheel drive models have the front drive shaft coming from this side, right? The front drive shaft comes in from the transfer case and goes in this way. So you can't have a starter there because usually, I guess this hole right here, this window right here is where the front drive shaft goes into the front differential. So, and I say that because in the past, or sometimes, especially in the V6 crowd, it gets a little tricky for them because they kept that all-wheel drive versus rear-wheel drive, you know, starter location for a while. So this is, again, so now this is back. This is front, but this is back. What I'm saying is that with these, you either have a hole over here or over here for the starter, okay? So starter location, looks like some creature now. So depending on where you have it, you know, that determines what kind of block you're going to have. So we used to call this the all-wheel drive block, but as you can see, the M45 from 2006, they were not all all-wheel drive, they were rear-wheel drive. I think they found a way to make it easy. Just go ahead and use this block right here. Excuse me. Let's talk about oil pans now. This one right here, who uses this? Q45 02 to 06, M45 03 04. So basically this is just the first generation. This is the newest stuff. That's how it came in, okay? Then over here, who uses this funky one? Kind of really butchered the design here, but you get it. It's not flat at the bottom. It's you know, let's try to do some justice to it. That's it. That's more like it. This is not art. This is illustration, okay? It's different. Don't judge me. Now it looks weird. Again. Okay, who uses this one right here? This one is used by the M45 06 to 2010, but only the rear-wheel drive models. I'll explain. The all-wheel drive models use this one right here. So M45, whenever the all-wheel drive model was introduced, that is 08 to 10, just the all-wheel drive models. Okay, and then FX45, all FX45s are all-wheel drive. So 03 to 08, that's who uses this oil pan right here. Okay, and it's the same part number, by the way, shared. When you buy, they might improve them, they might look a little different, but generally it's the same one that should be shared. So these are the basics. When you want to buy an engine, I think back in the day when I started this thing, right, people with, if you're watching this video, I'm willing to bet 9 out of 10 you own an M45, because just, I guess it's a numbers thing really, but we get more engine problems with rear-wheel drive M45s for whatever reason. Maybe something to do with that, but that's a theory I've never been able to prove. So people would ask, what kind of engine can I use? Can I buy one from an M45 of 2003 and 4 because they're cheaper? And then you bring it home and you realize, oh, I can't make it work. This thing looks so different. The intake is different. The block looks different. The oil pan is different. Am I going to make this work? You know, it's got throttle cables. Mine is drive-by-wire, all those things. So what we got into, and I think, not to brag, but I think I've got one of the first documented JDM swaps out there, you know. What we discovered was that the JDM engines, they were an interesting combination. So again, we'll try to be consistent with that schematic over there. But if you bought a JDM engine, usually, so let's start with the V, just because I want a little bit of suspense. Okay, so this is a JDM engine. This is the front. JDM engine, which is what we have right here, would come with all JDM engines, right? And to the best of my knowledge, all the Nissans and Infinitis coming from Japan are all rear-wheel drive sedans, right? So all of them, despite all that stuff, all of them came with starters right here. As you can see, right? The starter is right here. It's on the passenger side. In Japan, since they're right-hand drive, it's on the passenger side. So this one right here matches this engine that you will need on the M45 between 06 to 10. So this was the right engine to buy. But, however, they also came with an intake that looked like this. You get it. This one right here, this is an intake manifold that usually came with the JDM engines. It's the wrong intake manifold. And as you can see, this one here would work for many others. But again, as I said, if you're watching this video, it's very likely that you have this one right here. This is most probably what you own, but yeah, entertain me in the comments. Let me know what brings you here. Is it curiosity? Are you trying to find something? But I know, wow, 16 minutes already. Time flies when you're having fun. I know it's a long video, but I'm trying to make sure you don't get screwed up at all, okay? So this intake manifold is the wrong one, okay? It's easy. You can actually just bolt this, unbolt this one from your original engine. Hopefully nothing happened to it. And then switch it over. These are all interchangeable. All the bolts, all the locations are all the same. So you can just unbolt this one right here, remove this, and put the correct intake manifold on there. It's mostly straightforward, but you might need to move a few things. For example, this one right here has the canister, the vacuum canister for your dual intake system in the back. In the 06 through 2010, it's in front here. So the few things you might need to do, reroute a few different things, but generally they bolt on. Okay, cool. You got that covered. So you figured out what to do with the intake. Can make it happen. Then comes to the oil pan. They come with this oil pan that's still in the car that you can see that's still in the engine that you can see right now. They have the flat bottom. It looks like a pan. Well, it is an oil pan, ain't it? So this one right here, which is again the wrong one for the Infiniti right here, because they use this one right here. But of all the Japanese engines I've seen, none of them, well, at least what we used to call the JDM engine. Let's call this JDM version 1. I'll explain why. Okay, so whenever you'd buy an engine like this, that was so cheap, when I started doing this thing like, we're 2022, started doing this like 2015, so 7 years ago, give or take. Back then, if you wanted to buy a replacement engine for an M45, you would get it for, at minimum, $4,000. But then I realized that you can buy this JDM engine for $1,000 shipped to your door. And it comes with a transmission that you don't care to use either. So it was at that point, it was really easy. Why bother? So we'd buy the JDM engine and then remove the intake, get your intake manifold from your 06 M45 and bolt it on. And then for the oil pan, take this one here, right, from your engine, assuming it hasn't been broken or anything, and then come in here and install it in place. So this was the most important thing you were looking for whenever you'd buy the JDM engine. But it worked. It was a little bit of work, but again, not a bad deal, because these are very low mileage engines. You can look at it. I mean, you can tell it hasn't really lived a very hard life. Usually, man, I've bought so many engines, and I've seen some they're not very big on oil changes over there, it seems. Anyway, that's cool. So when I made those videos in the past, I'd usually call this the JDM engine. This right here was the JDM engine. And it's got other interesting things like this exhaust manifold. This one is the older one. It's the one that you'd use on the Q45 and the M45, the older ones, because the newer manifold looks a little different. It's got a little accordion over here, a little flex section over here. More reliable intake manifold, but exhaust manifold. But again, everything outside of the block can be bolted on and off. If you get this one wrong, that's gonna, that's the beginning of a horrible day for you. But if you get this right, anything else can be switched around. I hope that makes sense, okay? So that's version 1. I say that because there's a version 2. Okay, so remember I said that when I started working on these vehicles, replacing an engine wasn't cheap. Granted, the cars were more expensive then, but these days, you buy an M45 for $6,000 with a bad engine, you're not trying to pay $4,000 for it, So these were about $4,000 back in the day. I started doing the JDM swaps and started, putting videos out there, and then see the proper engine for the M45. The prices started coming down, but I still wasn't very interested because, again, higher mileage and things like that, why bother, right? I like this one. Then over time, I realized that the JDM engines, actually, they had another version, and this version right here was exactly like the 06 M45 engine, which is a front, looks like an interesting loaf of bread now, front intake, front throttle body, and the engine is proper like that, with the V just right, and the starter in the right place. So far, that's a winner. And one thing I've never been able to, because I've not bought one of the new ones yet, is what kind of oil pan do they have? That I don't know yet. If someone knows that, please answer. Please let us know. If someone has bought one of those newer engines from eBay, please let us know what the oil pan looks like. But one thing I do know is that this one right here is a direct bolt-in. Basically, if I have an 06, let's just go with an 06 M45 and I wreck my engine, damage my engine, I can go to eBay, buy one of these. They're not cheap. Again, they start at 4,000, 5,000, something like that. Buy one of these and more or less bolted in. You wouldn't have to play the intake manifold and the oil pan games. And one thing I can tell you is this though, this oil pan, why is it special? The chassis design on these vehicles right here, let me talk about the Q45 and the M45. I've not really gone in depth with the FX45. If you used one of these oil pans over here, it would end up smashing the subframe. I can't remember if it was just the subframe area or if you would end up hitting the stabilizer. I can't remember what it is, but I know there's contact with the bottom because this is a little deeper than this one here. With the way the newer vehicles were designed, 06 and up, what happened is that this one was made this way because it needed to clear the stabilizer bar right here. So if you were to get one of these, because remember I said that this one is actually a little shallower, I've had to do it. Again, I'm a curious person and, do it for science. You can install one of these oil pans, the wrong oil pan, onto an 06 M45. And after all, remember this all-wheel drive oil pan right here? Yeah, because this one can be installed in an M45 08, right? So this oil pan right here, whenever I can, actually, I've been trying to avoid it. Part of me usually thought that, maybe this is the reason a lot of these engines have issues, but I've never been able to prove it because they have a longer pickup tube and all that stuff. So maybe that's not really the reason. Let's get back here. So this is the one engine I've not bought, I've not played with. Again, I love you guys, but kind of gets steep. I'm not trying to spend $4,000 to just satisfy my curiosity right now. So if you know the answer to this, the newer JDM engines, the ones that come from, you can tell the way they look. You can tell how new they look like, low mileage, they usually say that. If you know the answer to the oil pan question, please let us know. My guess is that it uses this one right here, just because, why change a design that's working fine so far? But again, I don't know that answer. I think these ones right here, these ones come from the Nissan, the equivalent of the Q45, so SEMA. I believe, or is it the president that uses it? I'm not 100% sure. There's one of these have an interesting mix whereby they use the VK45DE. That is the direct injected one. And I've seen someone buying the wrong engine as well, and they're thinking, whoa, this looks so different than mine. Why wouldn't it work? Yeah, bought the wrong one. So it's an interesting combination. Whenever you're trying to buy things from the JDM side, make sure they might have in the description on eBay, they write M45, Q45, FX45, all that stuff. But when you buy, just make sure, first thing is you lay your, get your eyes on the block. What does the block look like? If the block is good, then you can bolt all these other things and things can still work. This one right here, I believe, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, I think they do use this type oil pan, because this one here is used in the Nissan Fuga. And the Fuga is an equivalent of the M45, M35. I believe these guys started in 05 and they ran until 10. And then in 10, there was an interesting overlap, because what we call an M37 and M56, they started in 2010 over there. So yeah, interesting overlap over here. So, now that I'm talking about it, I think because of the chassis design and just to clear things better, I'm leaning more towards this. But again, I'd like someone to answer the question, what exactly, if you bought one of those, what does the oil pan look like? Those guys don't usually give you many pictures. They show you the top, maybe a little bit of the side, they show you the transmission, and maybe you can catch a glimpse of that going on, because the transmission usually has a hump, and you can tell, oh, the hump is on the correct side. So if you're watching this video and you're a JDM engine seller, please do us a favor. One, remove the cover. We want to see the intake. But usually you can just tell from the cover. If it's one of those with a cutout in the middle, that means it's, because it doesn't have this going on. If it's one of those black ones that just covers it all, your intake looks like this generally. Then we want to see the side. We'd like to see, where is the starter? Is the starter here, or is it on the other side? Would like to see that as well. Or take a picture from the back so we can see what's going on. Then this might be a little much to ask, but I mean, you usually have them on pallets, so would like to see what the oil pan looks like. The reason is, as I said, you can make it work, but for planning purposes, you'd like to know how much work do I have ahead of me. This is a long video. Time has really flown. I did not know I'd be doing it for this long, but I do enjoy saving people time and saving people money, saving people frustration. So I do get those complaints every once in a while. People saying, hey, your content is great, but your video is too long. I'm sorry. I apologize, but I'm not sorry. I don't know, because I have to do the content to this level, because not everyone is a professional. I want to make sure I cover all the bases with the content that I have. So I'm going to hold onto these sheets of paper for a while, and if I think about it and decide to do this video differently, maybe I will. But at this point, I'm very satisfied. I'm going to upload it as it is. Okay? Then it won't go live for a few days. Usually I upload it, then I think about it. I'm like, okay, does it sound good? Let me watch it myself. Okay, good to go. So all the best. Whatever it is that brought you here, if it was a crisis, like you're trying to replace an engine, I wish you the best of luck in your project. If you're here just because you're curious, I really appreciate your support, because, seeing those views, those likes, that's the kind of stuff that gets me going, okay? All the best. Talk to you guys on the flip side.